That's what's left of one of the flip cars.
I've seen a few of them over the years. Yeah, not this many in one spot.
Oh, maybe you've seen on the internet there's this guy who's been digging all these old Days of Thunder movie cars out of the weeds.
Howdy, everybody.
What do you have going on in here?
I don't know. It's been a very slippery slope. A friend of mine last fall sent me a message and said that a buddy of mine in Florida knows where there's a Days of Thunder car in the woods. And I was like, what? I was like, no way. He said, there's a guy named David on my friends list. He said, look him up. Tell him I sent you. So I sent him a message. Later, I got a photo in my Facebook Messenger of this car sitting in the woods. I mean, it was trees around it everywhere. I thought it was his car at first. And he's like, no, it belongs to the guy up the road. I don't even know how to get in contact with him. He just gave me the address where the car was. I didn't know how to get a hold of the guy. My mom's real good with doing like property search records and stuff. So she found a name and an address and a phone number that didn't work. I did the old fashioned way and just sent the guy a letter. And about a month later, I got a random phone call from the city where the car was. And at first I thought it was like someone, like a solicitor's phone call. It was a Sunday afternoon, so I didn't answer the phone. And I was like, wait a minute, that's the town where that mellow yellow car was. So I called the number back. The guy was very polite. He said, yes, it belonged to his dad. At one point, his dad had a bunch of them down there, and they just kind of all got sold off over the years. And this was the last one sitting down there. Said his wife was wanting to clean the property up and told me come get it. So I went down there and got it. I had no idea what to expect when I got there, and this is what I got. Like back in that corner over there, there's a big hole cut out of it, just very, very hastily cut out. And then the scene where they come across the start finish line, like in the movie, there's a bunch of smoke coming out of it. But when you watch the B-roll footage, like, I mean, there was sparks and fire and all kinds of stuff. And in the driver's compartment, right by the clutch pedal, there's a whole bunch of extra like fire padding stuff that's been added to it, which kind of would make you think they're trying to keep someone from getting burned up.
There were 3 of us doing that. We was all on the same crew, but there was only 3 of us doing paint and bodywork and decals. Pretty safety cautious, especially the stunt driver. He was really cautious. He wanted everything exactly the way he wanted it, and he wanted it perfect. Mm-hmm. It was going to be the way he wanted it, or he wasn't going to do it.
Yeah, this thing's been absolutely destroyed in the front. They kind of very hastily just crammed it.
Them FX guys, they know how to make something do something, but sometimes they wasn't the neatest at it.
Was there a scene where the front end got smashed in one of these things?
If you look real close, like when they're in the Daytona 500 in the movie, and they have the wreck, if you watch real close, there's a mellow yellow car that just gets clobbered in the front hard, and it just kind of skirts down off the track. I guess they thought you weren't going to see it when you watched the movie, but
when we first went to Daytona, they flew in a whole bunch of stunt drivers. I don't know where they got them. Some of them couldn't drive a straight drive. 2 of them were motorcycle stunt drivers, never been in a car. There was a lot of cars that got tore up, but they wasn't meant to get tore up. I stayed up a lot of nights putting cars back because they done something foolish on the track that they wasn't supposed to be doing, and we had to have it back at 6 o'clock the next morning. And they got a lot of that stuff got tore up, but it wasn't intentional. It was just accident. You know,
experience.
People not paying attention and all kinds of stuff.
It looks like this hood has that Superflo pink on it.
It's green too.
Some of them cars got painted different cars 3 or 4 times. It might have been a Superflo car. Next week it might have been a mellow yellow car. Next week it might have been City Chevrolet car. Yeah. It just, whatever they wanted and what they needed for whatever they was filming.
The lip of the trunk lid still got the top of the Exxon letters on it.
But we had a lot of bodies that we skinned off of these old race cars. When we got them, they were all kinds of cars.
Yeah.
And the bodies got set off, and they got set over there out behind the building. I don't know where that stuff wound up going. If somebody got it, somebody hauled it off, but they would skin a whole car, set the body out behind the building, put a new body on it. We'd do the body work and paint, decal it up.
Set it back out.
I mean, we had all kinds of cars. We had Ford T-Birds that had V6s and aluminum bodies on them. So, I mean, it was just wherever they could find an old race car, it could have been from anywhere. And if you notice in the movie where all them cars, like after the race, they look like they're dirty. Mm-hmm. And like they got like rubber all over them and whatever, and dirt all over them and all that kind of stuff. You know what that is?
No, I've always wondered.
Brown hair dye.
Interesting.
Spray. They would take a car like this. It would be perfectly sparkling clean. Put brown hair dye in a spray gun. Go down the side of it and put that brown hair dye down the side of it. They'd come back, do a big swirly thing on it like that, like it had a tire rub on it.
Okay.
Take it out and race it. That's
Yeah.
the way they did it.
I always
Brown
thought
hair dye.
those
It was
cars
pretty-
looked way dirtier than they should
Yeah.
for some of it. It looks like
Yeah.
they got stuck in a coal mine or something.
And it
It's
would be
way
worse
too
in the
dark.
front, it would fade to the back. And like I said, they would put tire swirly marks on it like they'd been up against a tire, you know?
Yeah.
And that's how they did that. It was brown hair dye. And we bought that stuff by the gallons.
Were the spoiler angles consistent with the type of track they were shooting on, or is this one flat and that one's not as flat just because that's how it got put together?
Just how it got put together.
Yeah. They was not that technical. It had to look like a race car.
Didn't have to actually be a race car.
Yeah. Some of them were real race cars. Hendrick had a couple of them that, you know, were a real deal race car, but a lot of them was just old race cars. A lot of them had some good engines in them. Some of them didn't have such good engines in them. It was just depending on what they was going to do with them that day.
Chassis looks like it used to be red. There's a Holman Moody switch plate.
I thought that was really cool.
It is. I wonder what this car used to be.
And the front clip is so funky too.
Have you any kind of theory what this chassis originated as? It's like, looks like it's red, has a Holman Moody switch plate.
Randy, didn't you say that y'all got a bunch of Bud Moore chassis?
Yeah.
That would probably explain.
T-Birds. One of the guys that was working on the movie with us used to work for Bud. And that's how we got some of the cars from Bud.
Those motorcraft cars have red frames back then?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's probably what
Greg
this
would
was.
know.
And I didn't really spray the inside of too many of them, maybe 3 or 4. Mostly just the outside. A lot of times the boys in the fab shop, once they got the old body skinned off, they'd go in there and spray, touch up the roll cage and spray all that stuff, and all that kind of, a lot of that was done before the body and the sheet metal and all that was put, cause a lot easier when all that stuff's off.
Where did the roof damage come from?
So if I'm right about it being that car, if you watch real close, the roof on the car that passes the start and finish line, it looks like someone fell on it. I mean, it's caved in, and it looks like, you know, someone could have got in there and just pushed it back up fairly easily.
Well, if you watch a lot of that, when that was done, a lot of them guys jumped on the car
Really.
at the end. But there's a lot of stuff that's filmed that ain't in that movie. I mean, there's days and days and days of film that's not even in it, that never wound up in it. I spent 3 days filming a part inside the garage, and the whole thing got cut. Never. Crews walked up to a drink machine, got a drink out of a drink machine, and we was all standing around, and we done that for 3 days, and none of that is in the movie.
What else have you noticed climbing through these things? We haven't looked much at the Russ Wheeler car yet.
It's kind of hard to see, but the door bars in this thing were, at some point they were black, and at some point they were yellow. So I don't know if this was like an old Levi Garrett car at some point, or it's hard to say what it was.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just got, it doesn't have the stamped floor pans like it's supposed to have in it. It's like someone just kind of did some quick bead roll flat panels and stuck them in there just for the sake of it having floor pans in it.
Yeah, that's right, because they would have had to use that Ford
The Ford
stamping
pans.
back then.
Yep. So the story I got on this car is I actually knew about this car first. And I got to looking at it pretty close, and I was like, I think that car is the real thing. So I did a little bit of research, and I figured out where the car was. And I called the guy, and apparently a few other people figured out where the car was also. And as soon as I said what I was calling about, he started cussing me out, told me, I don't know how y'all figured out where this car is. It's not effing for sale, and blah, 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 and hung the phone up on me. And this was probably 3 or 4 years ago. And I just kind of washed my hands of it and didn't think much about it. And then after I posted a video of the 51 car, I had 3 guys message me and say, I know where there's another one if you're interested. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And I started getting random photos from them of this car. And the way they said it was a yellow car, so in my head I thought it was going to be a city car. And I saw the pictures of this, and I was like, well, hell, that's that car out of Florida. The car was sat down around the Daytona area. And the guy that I got the car from, so the guy that yelled at me, sold the car to the guy I got the car from. And he said they leased out, I think it was a Scotty's hardware store down there. And that's where they did they'd fix the cars at night, repaint them, do whatever they had to do, and then get them back out to the speedway the next morning. And he said the guy that owned that building was given that car when they were done filming, like as a souvenir, and somehow ended up in the junkyard down there. But I don't know.
So the guy who ended up buying it that you bought it from, did he get cussed out by the other guy too?
He did say that the guy was very ornery when he spoke to him. So
how did he get it though?
I don't know.
Did he offer him enough money, or did he?
I don't know. I don't know if he.
He called his wife instead.
Basically, I have no clue. But yeah, somehow he talked the guy out of it and ended up with it. And he was apprehensive about selling it. But when the other guys told him about me, that I already had this car, that I was trying to get my hands on the Hardy's car to put it back with this car and get him inside and at least try to preserve him, he was kind of, I guess, changed his mind and had a change of heart and decided he let the car go. And he's a nice guy. Nice guy. It's very pleasant. Much nicer than the first guy. That's for sure.
Crazy how much, how many layers of paint are on there, and how you can see where the sun didn't touch it, or touched it less.
The paint on them cars wouldn't last a week.
Really?
It would fade out in the sun in less than a week. It was House of Color neon. Every one of the color, the Superflo car was the red neon color, the greens and the yellow on the city. It all was put over a base coat of shimmering white. And then you sprayed the neon and then you cleared it. You could go back in a week or 2 weeks if you had to do a repair and peel the decals off, and you could see how much it faded in a week's time or 2 weeks' time compared to what it looked like under the decal compared to what the outside looked like out in, like this car. See, it's turned back completely white.
Like it's so much more blue.
Yeah, it is, and that's not even like the neon part.
Do you have a third one now?
Here's a third one sitting right there on the trailer.
Did you buy that, or did he just bring that here for fun?
I bought the car.
Oh, so this is like delivery day.
Basically, yeah. Yeah.
Should we go out and look at
Let's
it?
take a look at it. But that's what's left of one of the flip cars.
Wow.
So is this one that would have had the pyrotechnics in it to launch it into the air?
Yeah, so a friend of mine, Robbie, worked for Hendrick when they were filming, and they ended up with one of the cars back there. I guess the cannon was behind the driver's seat. And then this car, the cannon was actually set kind of back here where his side was. So it was all back here. I found like B-roll footage of the car when they shot it off, and they towed this car behind another car. So if you watch the B-roll footage, there's a Richard Petty 43 car towing this car down to Volusia. It was an airport down there, down a runway. And you can see the 43 car lets this car go, and it rolls about 20 feet and just basically explodes.
Is that why the whole back is gone now?
Yeah. As the car flips over, you can see, there's nothing left of it. All you see is like bent up trailing arms, and they cut, for some reason, they're like hollowed out the back of the third member there. And when the car flies through the air, you can see that all cut out.
There's a crankshaft in here.
The dash says Oldsmobile. Do you know what the past life of these chassis were before they were movie cars?
They were all bought. I've heard a lot of them come out of Bud Moore's shop. I've heard a couple of them came out of Hilton's shop. So that says Swisher Sweet Oldsmobile on there. So it had to have been an old Rob Moroso Oldsmobile before they cut it up and put the Chevy body on it. Still got the tow rig up front.
Nice engine.
Yeah.
You gonna get that? You gonna fire that up again or what?
Great.
You can probably grill something in there pretty easily.
So I guess it was made so when the charge went off and the car flipped forward, like that would dig into the ground and flip the car over.
Oh, that makes sense.
Had to make it extra ridiculous.
Where'd you pull this one out of?
Chesney. I was up sitting behind a guy's property in Chesney in a giant field full of Studebakers.
What happened to these cars after the filming was done? Like, did someone go to amusement parks, or like why South Carolina?
Well, they all didn't go to South Carolina. It's just my shop is in South Carolina.
Oh.
So some of them I did before we left. Some of them I did at different racetracks in different, like Daytona, And then we went to Darlington and stayed for a long time. And they actually leased us out an old dealership down there that was closed. So we had a service department, offices, body shop, everything. In Daytona, they leased out a big lumber company that used to sell like 84 lumber. They used to just sell building materials, you know, big warehouse buildings. So we had one of them in Daytona that we had like the fab shop and all different kind of stuff in that one big building. And then they leased me a body shop away from that a little bit, a closed down body shop in Daytona. So I used that in Daytona. I used the dealership in Florence when we was down there doing them at Darlington and Florence, down in there. And then a lot of that movie was filmed in Florida at Volusia County Speedway. All of the pit stops scenes, most of that was done at Volusia County Speedway. And they learned real quick not to stand behind the car when it come off the jack. It didn't take long. They got beamed in the head with about 17 lug nuts, and it didn't take them long.
Did you have to do any coordinating with Hendrick, or like what was their involvement?
This right here kind of fell under the Hendricks umbrella. That's kind of the way we got paid. That's kind of how we worked this thing. It was all kind of under the Hendricks.
I don't want to be the only one asking questions here. These are your cars. What did you want to talk to him about?
Do you like recognize, you know, like that car was from this scene or that car was from that scene, or?
A lot of times I was in the shop working, so I wasn't at everything that they filmed, you know. I did sneak off sometimes if it was fairly close where I could go watch something, you know. The FX people was in that same building we was in. So in Daytona, they was down at the end of the building we was in. So they did a lot of that special effects stuff, the smoke, and the part where the motor blows up and the piece comes out of the hood. I actually cut 3 hoods with a plasma cutter with a little star and skimmed them with body filler. And they had a small cannon on the roll bar, and when you shut the hood, it was right there, and it would blow that piece of
Bono out of it,
and it would peel up like that, you know, and look like something come flying out of the hood. So I had to do one so they could play with it and see how it worked. And oh yeah, that works good. Then you got to do 3 more because we're gonna film it 3 different ways, you know. They had cameras outside, they had cameras inside, they had cameras everywhere. I mean, they had cars with camera mounts. Depends on what they was doing.
Yeah. But that car over there still got the camera mounts and the A-posts on it.
We had some that was on the front, no windshield. We had some inside the car. There was some behind the driver. They had them everywhere. It was blue Alka-Seltzer car. We had to fix something on it that night because it got tore up. And it had to be over at the other fab shop from my body shop to the fab shop, so they could load it up and get it to Daytona that weekend for all the filming they did at the real race. All the rollbacks were loaded, and they didn't have one to come and pick the car up. And it's about 3 miles. I said, what we gonna do? So one of them said, well, just drive it over there. So we made sure there was fuel in it. And I said, what if I get caught? I mean, I'm gonna go to jail driving this stupid thing. I mean, it was a full-blown race car. It was a real race car. So I drove it down through that neighborhood, and one of the guys was following me in the truck, gonna bring me back. And we was going through that neighborhood, and it was like probably 8 o'clock one Saturday morning. We were close enough to the racetrack that you could hear the 24 hours of Daytona the whole time we was working. So we weren't far. So I jumped in it, and we drove down through the neighborhood, and they followed me. Well, there was this guy out in the front yard at the corner of the street, and he was trimming hedges with his hedge trimmer. He looked up and seen me coming down the road. He walked out to the edge of the road, and he was following me. So when I got right up beside him, I pulled up and stopped, and I said, hey dude, can you tell me how to get to the racetrack from here? And he just started telling me how to get to the racetrack like it was a big deal, you know. And we was all dying laughing because he was standing out there, yeah, go down here and take a right, and then go down here about a mile. He just like, but it was funny because he was a little bit wondering what was going on, but he never really acted like he was really surprised, and he just went right on with the directions like it wasn't nothing new, you know. I'm sitting in there in a race car with open headers and this waking up the whole neighborhood, and he acted like it ain't nothing. And the boys in the trucks back there, they was dying laughing. They were hilarious.
What is that thing?
I wondered that too. There's one on the other side.
There's one over there too.
Yeah, that one's smashed. But there is one.
Could that be something that they let smoke fly out of? Like
I
they
wondered
fill the
that.
trunk up with fake smoke or something and have
Possible.
it get pulled out of there?
Oh, that little duck.
Yeah, there's one on both sides.
Oh, there is one hole.
There's the hole, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I thought so.
I don't know if it's a rust hole or if it was probably an actual hole that expanded from
Yeah.
rust over time.
I mean, it looks like a drilled hole.
But it's amazing with that right there and the technology that they used back then that they could actually get a car to go that fast and stick to a track.
Some people dispute the moon landing. I think about race cars of that time period and I'm like, I think they probably could have done it.
Yeah.
They probably could do it. Put a guy on a rocket and send him up there and hope he makes it. I think they could do it.
You know, you ever thought about sometimes if somebody doesn't tell you and explain to you why you can't do something, that you just go and do it because you don't know any better,
Yeah.
and it works?
Yeah.
We pretty much had the whole motel, like 7-floor motel. You know, we had the run of the whole thing. It had a restaurant in the bottom, a little bar, you know, and we could all go down there and hang out when we got in, you know, before we go to bed. And Duval would come down there and hang out with us a lot, a couple of other guys, but the FX people were staying there. You can't have fireworks in California. Fireworks stands on both sides of the road. Y'all can buy fireworks? Yeah. When? Anytime you want them. They'd go over and spend $500,000, $600,000 at the fireworks store. They bought the fireworks store out in one night. We was right beside a Cracker Barrel. They'd never seen a Cracker Barrel. They was going in there and buying them little toy trucks and little cars and all this kind of stuff. And we got in kind of tight with the night manager. He'd pretty much let us do it. We go up on the roof at night sometimes, play around. They were strapping them fireworks to them plastic cars and trucks and shooting them across the top of the motel and betting on which one was going to get to the other side first. Some of them went off the side, you know, but I mean, they were shooting them across the whole top of that motel roof. They'd line them up 3 or 4 at a time, light them things, and them rockets take off, and they'd go out that. But they spent money like, but they would bet on anything. And it wasn't no $20 bet. It was $100, $200, $500. I mean, it was all about having fun. I mean, they worked hard, but they was about having fun.
Yeah.
And when they got off of work, they crazy people. They didn't care. They'd do all kind of crazy stuff. But it was funny to watch them. They'd line them things up and shoot them all the way across the roof of that motel. Rockets. Some of them would get halfway across there and try to fly and go sideways. They were laughing their butts off. We get some beer, take it up there on the top, sit there and drink beer and shoot them rockets. 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They didn't care. But they was fascinated with the Cracker Barrel, because they'd go to Cracker Barrel. Hey, they got this down there. Where'd you get that? I got it right there. Oh, let's go get some more. I mean, the fireworks man, he was tickled to death. See, when he seen them coming across the street, he was tickled to death because he knew they was going to spend some money in there. And they did. And they bought him out about 2 days. He was empty. He didn't have hardly nothing left.
If the early 90s NASCAR vibe of Days of Thunder fascinates you, you're in the right place, because we have tons of videos from all these old places, race shops, race cars, the drivers, the crew chiefs, team owners, everybody that made racing great. Most of them have been on this channel, and if they haven't yet, they will be. So if you're new here, go check out the channel page.